Every family has their own reunion dinners, where everyone gathers around the table, sharing stories and enjoying warm, heartfelt moments. But what happens when a certain guest continuously causes bizarre incidents? At first, it's just a few plates accidentally slipping and shattering, a strange coincidence that stretches on for months. However, when things go beyond the realm of mere accidents, the truth begins to unravel in an unimaginable way. A hidden camera, a shocking video, and a family dinner that turns into a stage for exposing deception. But can justice be served without causing irreparable harm? Or will this confrontation leave a permanent fracture in family bonds? It all started with the intimate dinner gatherings that my husband and I hosted every month or so. These evenings were a time for our family to come together, share joy, and reconnect after our busy days. Being someone who values elegance and tradition, I always served our meals on the fine porcelain plates I inherited from my grandmother. They weren't just dinnerware. They carried sentimental value, a piece of family history preserved in their intricate patterns. My mother-in-law always admired these plates, appreciating their classic beauty. But my sister-in-law was different. She once bluntly stated that the plates were not her style. I didn't think much of it until one of them was dropped and shattered last February. I assumed it was an accident. After all, anyone can be a little careless sometimes, right? But it didn't stop there. In April, during another dinner, my sister-in-law and her boyfriend took their plates to the sink. Just seconds later, both plates slipped from their hands and crashed onto the floor, shattering into pieces. I told myself it was probably just another accident. But then May came, and 2 more plates were broken. June arrived, and this time, a plate and a cup were smashed. Each time, my sister-in-law would look embarrassed and apologize. Still, as the number of broken dishes kept increasing, while no one else in the family ever had such mishaps, I began to feel uneasy. I brought it up with my husband, but he just laughed it off, saying I was overreacting. "Accidents happen," he told me. "Don't overthink it." But I couldn't shake the growing discomfort in my gut. My mother, who knew how careful I was and also found it hard to believe in so many coincidences, suggested a simple solution: installing a small camera in the dining room. I knew this might seem extreme, but I needed certainty. So I followed her advice. Then came July. During another family dinner, everyone left the dining room for just a few minutes, and when we returned, another plate was broken. But this time, I had proof. I sat down and played the footage from the hidden camera. What I saw left me in shock. The moment we stepped away from the table, my sister-in-law stood up. She glanced around, making sure no one was watching. Then, without hesitation, she threw the plate onto the floor. No awkward fumbling, no sign of an accident. Just a deliberate act, carried out with a disturbing sense of ease, as if she had done it many times before. I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. There was no doubt anymore. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional destruction. But why? And more importantly, what should I do with the truth I had just uncovered? I sat there, my eyes glued to the screen, my heart pounding as the video ended. The truth was undeniable. My sister-in-law hadn't accidentally broken the plates as she always pretended. She had deliberately thrown them to the ground when no one else was in the room. I couldn't comprehend why she would do such a thing. Was it really because she didn't like my plates, as she had once mentioned? But if she simply disliked them, why go to the trouble of systematically destroying them? I thought back to previous incidents, the looks she had given, the way she was always the only one to drop the plates. Everything lined up in an unsettling way. I felt anger rise within me, but more than that, I felt disappointed. This wasn't just about a few broken porcelain dishes. This was about disrespect, about deliberate destruction in my own home. For the moment, I decided to keep the video to myself. I needed time to think before taking action. I had tried talking to my husband, but as always, he dismissed my concerns. "Maybe she didn't do it on purpose," he said. "It could just be a coincidence." I stared at him in frustration. I had warned him multiple times, tried to address it calmly, but he refused to take it seriously. That only strengthened my resolve. I needed to protect what was mine in the way I saw fit. Then, the perfect opportunity arrived. The following month, the family gathered for another dinner. This time, it wasn't just my in-laws, my sister-in-law, and her boyfriend, but also my own family, my parents, my siblings, and even my little niece. A full, cozy dinner, but I was ready for the confrontation I knew was inevitable. I served everyone one by one, making sure my sister-in-law was last. As she looked down at the table, her eyes widened in confusion. In front of her was not the fine porcelain everyone else had, but a colorful plastic children's plate, along with a sippy cup and a plastic-handled spoon and fork. She frowned, looking up at me. "I think you've mistaken my plate for your niece's," she said. I smiled, my voice calm but cutting. "No, no mistake. My niece is responsible enough to eat from an adult plate, but if you're going to act like a child in my home, I'll treat you like one." The atmosphere at the table shifted instantly. My sister-in-law looked as if she was about to explode, but before she could react, I pulled out my iPad and played the video. Silence fell over the room. Everyone watched as the footage showed my sister-in-law standing up, glancing around, then casually tossing a plate onto the floor. There was no excuse, no way to deny it. Her face turned crimson and tears welled up in her eyes, but I no longer cared. She grabbed the plastic plate, shot up from her seat, and stormed out of the room, practically fleeing. My in-laws immediately apologized, offering to pay for the broken dishes, but I simply smiled and told them not to worry. It wasn't about the money. It was about making sure the truth was seen. I had endured enough, and now no one could deny what had happened. The dinner continued, and we still had a good time, but deep inside, I knew this wasn't over. I may have won this battle, but the consequences, for my family, for my husband, were still unfolding. Had I done the right thing, or had I gone too far? Everything seemed to be over when my sister-in-law stormed away from the dinner table, but in reality, it wasn't. I might have exposed her actions, but the aftershocks of that event lingered, especially in my relationship with my husband. That evening, after all the guests had left, I sat down on a chair and let out a deep sigh of relief. I believed I had done the right thing. I had no regrets about revealing the truth. But when my husband walked into the living room, I immediately sensed the coldness in his gaze. "Did you really have to take it that far?" he asked, his voice heavy. I looked at him, trying to control my frustration. This wasn't the first time I had warned him about his sister's actions, but he always dismissed my concerns. I had endured, tried to handle things quietly. But when there was no other option, I had to let everyone see the truth for themselves. "What do you think? Did you watch the video?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. "I did," he sighed, "but humiliating her in front of the whole family. Was that necessary? She has been damaging my belongings for months, right here in my own home. I told you, but you didn't believe me. If I hadn't done this, would anyone have believed me?" My husband remained silent. I knew he was torn between two thoughts: the undeniable truth he had just witnessed and his love for his own sister. I understood that, but I couldn't accept that he valued her feelings more than the basic respect I deserved. The next morning, the tension between us remained. Then, I received a message from my sister-in-law's boyfriend. "I think you really humiliated her. She cried all night. Have you considered apologizing?" I stared at the message, then replied calmly, "Have you seen the video?" A few minutes later, my message was marked as read, but there was no response. I smirked slightly. That was exactly what I expected. Not long after, my husband received a call from his sister. She was sobbing, complaining that I had mocked her in front of everyone, that I had blown everything out of proportion. When he hung up, he turned to me. "Did you send the video to her boyfriend?" he asked, a hint of reproach in his voice. "Yes, I did. Because he thought I was wrong, so I showed him the truth, just like I did with the whole family last night," I answered firmly. My husband didn't respond right away. I could see him struggling to find a way to defend his sister, but the truth was undeniable. "I just wish you had handled this more gently," he finally said. "Did you ever give me the chance to handle it any other way?" I asked. "How many times did I tell you? I tried to endure. I tried to make you understand, but you didn't care." If I hadn't acted, I would have lost more plates by now, and no one would have believed me. This time, he had nothing to say. I knew there was still a gap between us that wouldn't be easily bridged, but I had no regrets about what I had done. I couldn't let pretense win over the truth. I couldn't let someone continue to disrespect my home. Maybe my husband would take time to accept this. Maybe my sister-in-law would keep complaining to anyone who would listen. But none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was that from now on, she wouldn't dare touch my plates again. And to me, that was already a victory. After the tense conversation with my husband, I knew this story was far from over. Even though I had exposed the truth, the consequences still lingered, not just between me and my sister-in-law, but also between me and my husband. The air between us remained cold, devoid of the light-hearted conversations we once had. I knew he was struggling internally, trying to reconcile the harsh truth with his familial love. In the days that followed, I didn't bring up the matter again, nor did I ask my husband what he thought about it. I let things unfold naturally, believing he needed time to accept reality. But I also realized that something had changed. There were no more dismissive remarks whenever I mentioned my sister-in-law. If in the past he always defended her, now he no longer told me I was overreacting. That alone was enough to make me understand that deep down, he knew I was right. As for my sister-in-law, she continued to seek sympathy from those around her. I heard from my mother-in-law that she had called her, crying, saying that I had slandered her in front of the entire family, humiliating her to the point where she couldn't face anyone. But what was notable was that, no matter how much she cried, my in-laws no longer defended her. A week later, my mother-in-law called. There was a hint of hesitation in her voice. I know you don't want to hear about this anymore, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything that happened. I don't know why she did what she did, but I truly feel ashamed seeing you being treated that way in your own home. I was slightly taken aback by her apology. My in-laws had never been overly biased, but they had never explicitly taken my side when it came to their daughter either. This time, the truth must have been so undeniable that they couldn't turn a blind eye. You don't have to apologize, I replied. I just wanted everyone to know the truth. I understand, she sighed. Your father-in-law and I have spoken to her. I don't know if she truly regrets it, but at the very least, she has no way to deny it anymore. And about the dishes, I'd like to buy you a new set. I smiled softly, appreciating her gesture. Thank you, but I don't think that's necessary. Dishes can be replaced, but what matters is that I've defended my respect in this house. She was silent for a moment before speaking gently. I understand. I just hope this doesn't drive the family apart. I hoped for that too. But I knew that once trust was broken, it wasn't easy to rebuild. I didn't expect to have a good relationship with my sister-in-law after everything she had done. I only hoped that from now on she would know her limits. That evening, after days of silence, my husband finally spoke up. I've been thinking a lot. I'm sorry for not believing you from the start. That one sentence lifted a weight off my chest. I didn't expect him to immediately take my side completely, but at the very least, he had acknowledged the truth. I gave him a gentle smile and said, You don't need to apologize. I just need you to understand. He nodded slightly. This matter might not be entirely closed in everyone's hearts, but for me, it had reached its conclusion. I no longer had to silently endure the emotional toll, nor did I have to worry about mysteriously broken dishes. Most importantly, I had regained my respect in my own home. Even though the story has come to an end, its echoes still linger within the family. I know my sister-in-law won't easily forget the humiliation she endured in front of everyone. She may have no way to deny her actions anymore, but that doesn't mean she'll acknowledge her mistakes and change. A few weeks later, I heard from my mother-in-law that my sister-in-law had been avoiding family dinners. She came up with various excuses, being busy with work, feeling unwell, but we all knew the real reason. She was ashamed. She was angry. But more importantly, she now knew that from this point forward, I was no longer someone she could easily bully. My mother-in-law occasionally mentioned her with concern, as if fearing that the family dynamic would never be the same again. I understood her feelings, but I had no regrets. I couldn't pretend nothing had happened, nor could I continue tolerating disrespect in my own home. As for my husband, Although he initially felt conflicted, I could see that over time he began to reassess the situation. He no longer defended his sister as he once did. When I set the table for dinner, he even helped me take out the porcelain plates, the ones I used to be afraid would get broken. He didn't say much, but his actions were enough for me to understand that he had accepted the truth. One day, I received a message from my sister-in-law. It wasn't an apology, nor an admission of anything, just a short, bitter text. "Thanks for making me look like a terrible person in front of the family. You won." I stared at my phone screen and smirked slightly. This wasn't an apology. It was resentment. She still didn't see where the real problem lay. To her, this wasn't a lesson in self-reflection. It was just a battle she had lost. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The next family dinner was noticeably calmer. No more shattered porcelain, no more pointed glances, no more tension every time my sister-in-law walked into the kitchen. Everything felt lighter, and for the first time, my home truly felt like a safe space, free from the threat of someone's destructive presence. My husband never brought up the past, but I could sense the shift in his attitude. He no longer blamed me for exposing the truth, nor did he try to force an unreasonable reconciliation. In the end, he chose the right side, the side of truth. My relationship with my sister-in-law may never return to what it once was, but that doesn't matter. I don't need someone who disrespects me in my life just to maintain a facade of harmony. I don't need half-hearted apologies or flimsy justifications. I only need one thing, respect, and now I finally have it.